The first flakes always seemed to fall on the eve of the Winter Lights Festival, gliding over the humble roofs of Greyhaven like powder from a baker's sieve. By dawn, the streets were frosted white, the river frozen in a single turquoise ribbon, and the centerpiece of the celebration, an ice maze as tall as 2 houses, sparkled beneath strings of lanterns. Outsiders traveled miles to experience the maze, yet most did not know why Greyhaven's version was different from the playful, family-friendly labyrinths erected in other snowy towns. Few believed the rumors until they heard the loudspeakers hiss, and secrets carried on cold air made their stomachs drop. Mara Thornton had grown up with those rumors, but she hadn't set foot in the maze since she was 17. That year, on her first wrong turn, a disembodied voice had announced to half the town that she had forged her mother's signature to skip swim practice for a party. The revelation was harmless enough. Plenty of teenagers bent rules. Still, humiliation had scorched Mara's face, and her best friend Jonah had laughed so hard he nearly swallowed a mitten. She'd sworn never to enter again. 11 years passed. Mara left for university, then marketing jobs in a bigger city. She returned only for funerals and token holiday visits. But when her father phoned in October to say the family house would be sold in the spring, Mara felt a twinge of regret. She booked a week off work and drove north through the swirling snow, determined to join the festival one last time, and, if she was honest, to see Jonah. It was barely noon, yet the festival plaza buzzed, vendors selling maple-glazed pastries, children pelting each other with snowballs, strings of paper lanterns bobbing on frosted wires. At the center loomed the maze, blocks of crystalline ice stacked into sinuous corridors. LED lights embedded within the ice shifted colors: indigo, jade, rose depending on where a competitor stepped, as if the walls were alive. Mara watched 2 teenagers dash inside, laughter echoing. A minute later, the lights flickered crimson and the loudspeakers crackled. "Samuel Reyes," the voice announced, silky and precise. "Sometimes pretends to be allergic to pineapple to seem interesting." The plaza erupted in giggles. A crimson hue pulsed through the walls nearest Samuel. From her vantage point, Mara saw the boy flinch, then bolt in another direction. The maze morphed, corridors pushing outward while others narrowed, nudging Samuel away from one path and toward another. "Still the same nasty trick," someone behind Mara muttered, half amused, half appalled. Mara grimaced. The maze didn't merely reveal secrets, it reshaped itself by them. Her old science teacher had once claimed the walls were mounted on hidden rails controlled by a panel of engineers, but plenty of Greyhaven residents believed the structure possessed its own frosty consciousness. They said each confession infused the ice, swelling some corridors, sealing others, forming a new map in real time. For every competitor, the destination lay in a different spot, and the town council offered a $1,000 prize to the first person each year who solved it without a single secret broadcast. Mara tightened her scarf. Winning wasn't her aim. She needed closure, or perhaps absolution, for a secret far darker than forged signatures and pineapple fibs. A gloved hand waved in her periphery. "Mara, you came?" Jonah Haig stood by the maple stand. Older, yes, with a faint scar by his eyebrow and snow dusting his black curls, but unmistakably Jonah. He wrapped her in a quick hug that smelled of cedar and campfire. "I almost didn't recognize you," she said, stepping back to study him. "You look taller. I was 5'11" senior year. What I lack in height I gained in," he patted a slight paunch beneath his parka, "holiday cheer." They bought hot chocolate while music drifted from a brass quartet. Conversation flowed easily. Family updates, small-town politics, who'd married whom. Mara wanted to say, "I'm glad you lived," but the words felt melodramatic. She settled for, "You're entering the maze again?" He blew on his cocoa. "That's the plan. I've tried every year but creep out once the walls start shifting. Thought I'd give it another go before turning 30. I'm thinking of trying too," she said. Jonah's eyes sharpened. "Really?" "I need to do something brave before everything changes." She gestured toward the maze, which had just flared teal. "Might as well be that." He hesitated. "It can be rough. Secrets, I mean." Mara's heartbeat stumbled. 11 years earlier, She'd harbored only trivial mischiefs. Now she carried the secret of the night Jonah's car slid off Blackwell Bridge. She had been in the passenger seat, hysterical, telling him to drive faster away from the police cruiser she swore was tailing them after they'd trespassed in the quarry. She, the captain of impulsivity, had dared him. Jonah, tipsy on cheap rum, had complied, tires skidding over ice. The guardrail snapped, the car plunged into the river, and Jonah's right leg shattered against the dashboard. He spent 6 months learning to walk again. Mara never confessed that her panic had goaded him. The official report blamed weather and rum. "I'll be fine," she said softly. A town crier in a faux fur hat rang a silver bell. "Next group in 10 minutes, he shouted. 2 at a time, first pair to finish clean wins a festival-wide drink token." "Come on," Mara said before she could reconsider. "Let's show these people how it's done." Jonah's expression blended surprise and delight. "We're pairing up?" "I figured we watch each other's backs." She kept her tone light. "We've got years of inside jokes. If the maze wants secrets, let's bore it with our nostalgia." Jonah laughed, but his gaze lingered on her face as though trying to read lines she hadn't spoken. He offered his arm. They joined the queue. Only 6 pairs stood ahead of them. Mara studied the current entrance, a mother and teenage daughter meandering through turquoise corridors. The teenager turned left, then right. A wrong choice. Loudspeakers boomed. "Nina O'Rourke has been reading her mother's private journal for months." Gasps rippled through onlookers. The daughter's cheeks glowed crimson. The walls surrounding her bulged outward, creating 2 new passages, while the mother's corridor narrowed, forcing her to follow. Mara noted the pattern. The maze separated people whose secrets targeted each other, steering them toward confrontation or reconciliation. Minutes later, the crier beckoned Mara and Jonah forward. They signed a waiver, were handed microchipped wristbands so the maze knew their identities, and waited at the frosted archway. Mara could almost feel the ice vibrating, an anticipatory hum. "Contestants ready?" the crier called. Mara's breath fogged. Jonah squeezed her hand. Together, they stepped inside, the arch sealed behind them with a soft hiss. The first of many shifting walls, no doubt. White noise-filled overhead speakers, reminiscent of wind over tundra. An electronic chime signaled their start. At once, LED lights bloomed silver within the walls, illuminating a single corridor ahead. Mara whispered, "Left or right at first junction?" Jonah lifted his hand, palm flat, like a divining rod. "Left feels lucky." They turned left. The corridor bent into a curve of pale aquamarine, the floor grippy with sprinkled sand. Blue light pulsed gently, as if approving. Good sign. At the next fork, Jonah gestured right. They proceeded, another gentle pulse. Encouraged, Mara inhaled icy air that tasted faintly of peppermint. If they stayed perfectly attuned, maybe they could exit without exposure. Yet each step sent an anxious drumbeat through her ribs, the secret thrumming to break free. The third junction offered 3 options. The middle path glimmered violet. The others lay a duller blue. Jonah pointed to the violet passage. Mara hesitated, then nodded. They walked 10 paces, and alarms like muted gong strikes reverberated above. Red strobes flared. Mara squeezed her eyes shut. She waited for the voice, for her buried guilt to roar across the speaker grid. But the announcement came for Jonah. Jonah Hayek sometimes wishes he had taken that scholarship in Seattle so he could start fresh where nobody knows his mistakes. Mara's head snapped toward him. Jonah's face was stone pale. The walls around him slid sideways, widening his path while mine constricted an inch, pushing us apart. "It's fine," he said hoarsely. "Everyone fantasizes about escaping." He forced a smile, but sorrow twitched his mouth. "I didn't know you felt trapped," Mara said. He shrugged. "Small towns remember everything." The path realigned, merging their corridors again. Without speaking, they pressed forward. The maze had not only revealed a secret, it had subtly changed the distance between them, mapping emotional geography onto ice. The next bend brought a split-level ramp. Mara chose upward. LED beams staying neutral. Good. A T-junction appeared. They turned right. No alarms. The icy ceiling flexed in a slow ripple overhead, sending prismatic shards of light across their coats. Mara tried to focus on choices left, right, ladder, slide, but memory clawed at her. Knights sneaking onto Blackwell Bridge, bottles clinking under the stars. Daring Jonah to prove he wasn't a cautious grandpa. She'd rewarded recklessness with laughter and kisses. She had trained him, unintentionally, to ignore his fear. Another intersection. Jonah motioned for her to decide. The left path glowed sea green, the right sapphire. Mara pointed right. They stepped together. Silence. Relief. She risked conversation. If you had taken Seattle, you'd be designing prosthetics by now. I'm still working on my engineering degree part-time. He adjusted his scarf. Not too late. His tone lifted, but Mara sensed defensiveness. They encountered a fork swirling with silver mist. The corridor on the right constricted before opening into dark space. The one on the left sloped downward. Mara studied the pattern of lights. A faint heartbeat rhythm echoed from the left wall. Instinct tugged her left, but fear of misstep made her freeze. Let's flip a coin, Jonah suggested. Don't have one. He patted his coat, frowning. Me neither. The maze lights flickered impatiently, as if bored. Finally, Mara inhaled deep and chose left. They descended a gentle grade, shoes crunching frost. Halfway down, alarms blared. This time, the voice belonged to Mara. Mara Thornton keeps a packed suitcase beneath her bed in case she feels the urge to vanish without goodbye. A gasp leaked from Jonah. Mara's pulse thundered. She hadn't realized the suitcase secret counted as wrong-turn fodder. It was truth, yes, but so mundane compared to her real burden. She braced for walls to rearrange, but instead the corridor behind them sealed shut, ice slabs knitting together like crystalline muscle. In front, 2 new passages unfolded. Apparently the maze demanded further honesty. Jonah touched her sleeve. You planning on disappearing? Sometimes city life feels suffocating. She exhaled shakily. I dream about hopping a train to somewhere tropical. Jonah nodded slowly. I get that. He didn't push. They chose the rightmost of the new passages, emerging into an atrium carved like a cathedral nave. Icicle chandeliers dangled overhead. At the far end, a reflective wall of polished ice mirrored them. Colored light danced across its surface. The silhouettes doubled in pink and green halos. Suddenly a third figure materialized in the reflection, a boy of maybe 16, lanky, clutching a skateboard. Mara startled, but when she turned, no one stood behind them. The reflection persisted. Jonah's voice trembled. That's my brother. Mara remembered Sam Funny, rebellious, 2 years younger than Jonah, who'd enlisted in the military, then died overseas. The maze must be probing grief. Jonah approached the reflective wall, hand outstretched, but the figure dissolved into mist. A heartbeat later, the loudspeakers crackled. Jonah Haygate feels responsible for Sam's death because he convinced him that real men enlist. Jonah staggered. His breathing turned ragged. The corridor behind him receded, isolating him within the nave. Mara tried to reach him, but a transparent barrier of ice shot from the floor, blocking her path. No! She yelled, pounding the slick surface. Maze, you've proven your point. Jonah's face crumpled. He sank to his knees. I never said that, he whispered, but Mara heard the lie. She remembered a bonfire after graduation, Jonah teasing Sam about cowardice if he skipped recruitment. At the time, they'd all used bravado to mask uncertainty. The floor beneath Jonah glowed amber. A pathway emerged to his left. He wiped his eyes, rose unsteadily, and followed it. The barrier between them melted, letting Mara hurry after him into a narrower tunnel lit by tranquil lavender. We can leave, she offered quietly. He shook his head. No, I want to finish. Maybe the maze is therapy you can't skip. Mara swallowed. Therapy with an audience. They trudged through switchbacks. Wind moaned through concealed vents. Mara's boots slipped on a curve. Jonah caught her elbow. Their proximity sparked warmth beneath layers of wool, painstaking, complicated warmth. The corridor ended at a spiral staircase of packed snow. They climbed. At the top, a circular chamber awaited, ceiling open to night sky, where snow swirled like cosmic dust. In the center stood a pedestal of ice, holding 2 crystal keys. Mara exhaled, awed breath. Maybe these unlocked the exit. An inscription engraved into the pedestal shimmered. Only honest hearts may take both keys. Jonah picked up one key tentatively. Nothing occurred. Guess we each grab one? Mara extended her hand, but the moment her glove brushed the second key, alarms screamed. Ice spikes erupted around the pedestal, blocking her wrist. The loudspeaker boomed, frigid and omnipresent. Mara Thornton urged Jonah to speed across Blackwell Bridge the night of January 19th, leading to his injury, yet she has never confessed her role. Jonah dropped his key as if burned. The chamber's walls whitened, draining all color. Wind howled. Mara felt her lungs collapse. Thousands of faces outside the maze would have heard. Camera crews streamed the festival worldwide now. She tried to speak, but words crumbled on her tongue. Jonah lifted his gaze, eyes glassy. Is that true? Tears stung Mara's cheeks. Yes. Her voice cracked. I was terrified the cops would catch us. I begged you to floor it. When we hit the guardrail, I blacked out. Afterward, everyone blamed the rum and ice in your decision. I let them. Shock, anguish, and something like relief flickered across his features. The maze's spikes receded half an inch, as if waiting. I'm sorry, Mara whispered. I think about it every night. Jonah bent to retrieve the key, fists trembling. Why didn't you tell me? I was ashamed. You almost died. Admitting my guilt felt like pushing you off that bridge again. Silence swelled, broken only by snow whispering against the open ceiling. Jonah closed his eyes, breathing deep. When he opened them, they shone watery but steady. I knew you were scared that night. I never realized how much you blamed yourself. The ice around the pedestal began to thaw, droplets glistening. Do you hate me? She asked. No, he stepped closer. I hate the silence between us. Secrets rot. He offered the key. Take it. Let's finish this together. Mara's hand shook as she grasped the cold crystal. The pedestal glowed golden. 2 archways unfurled on opposite sides of the chamber, corridors shining emerald. They chose one and descended through a corridor that felt warmer. The ice walls tinted sunrise pink. No more alarms blared. The maze seemed satisfied. Minutes later, they reached a gate of carved frost, depicting intertwined phoenixes. The gate parted. Beyond lay the plaza, lanterns ablaze. Crowds hushed in anticipation. Hand in hand, Mara and Jonah stepped out. A collective exhale rushed across the onlookers, followed by applause. Hesitant at first, then thunderous. The crier approached, cheeks flushed. Ladies and gentlemen, our first successful team of the season. An extraordinary they completed the second half with no secrets revealed. Mara wanted to laugh at the irony. The worst secret had detonated already. What else could the maze take? The crier handed them ceremonial ribbons and drink tokens. A news reporter thrust a microphone toward Jonah, but he waved politely and guided Mara away from the cameras, past vendors selling roasted chestnuts, toward a quieter patch by the river. Snow drifted over frozen water, muffling festival din. Lantern lights shimmered on the ice. Mara inhaled crisp air. I understand if you never want to see me again. Jonah shook his head. You risked humiliation to tell the truth. I can't hold that against you. He rubbed his scar. Besides, I've got secrets of my own. I joined the maze today, hoping it would force me to face them. It did. He turned, meeting her gaze. I forgive you, Mara. Can you forgive yourself? She stared at the packed snow beneath her boots, then at the glowing maze behind them, corridors still shifting for newcomers. I think I will, eventually. Jonah offered his arm. Let's start with hot chocolate, the thick kind that sticks to your ribs. She smiled, looping her arm through his. As they walked, the loudspeakers announced another wrong turn. Someone named Evelyn secretly fed her neighbor's cat ham. The crowd tittered, harmless curiosity. Mara marveled at how easily people indulged in trivial gossip, while their own heavier truths festered silently. She glanced back once more. The maze walls radiated gentle amber, mirroring lantern glow. For a moment, she imagined the structure sighed, content that two hearts had shed their ice. Mara faced forward into snowfall, a path clear before her, not because the maze had carved it, but because confession had. Whatever twists awaited, she would meet them without fear. And if the road forked, she would choose honestly, ready for the world to know.